The first thing that made my stomach drop wasn't seeing him. It was hearing the way people said her name like she had always been there. I stood behind a tower of champagne flutes in the service corridor, a black apron tied too tight around my waist, my hair pinned into a neat bun that didn't feel like me. The cater captain, clipboard, headset, permanent frown, pointed at my chest like I was a problem to solve. Name tag. I held it up with a hand that looked steadier than I felt. The tag read Mia in clean, printed letters. Not my name. Not even close. But tonight, I needed to be someone invisible. The ballroom doors were already open, spilling out warm light and jazz and that expensive perfume that always smells like confidence. The kind that clings to the air when the room is full of donors, executives, and people who love being photographed giving back. It was the Horizon Children's Fund Winter Gala, the kind of event my fiancé called a professional obligation with a straight face. The kind that came with a strict +1 policy, except, apparently, for everyone else. For me, it came with a lie. You can't come, he'd said 2 weeks ago, adjusting his cufflinks in our bathroom mirror like he was practicing being a better version of himself. It's mostly investors and board members. It'll be boring. And it's, honestly, no spouses. No spouses. But in the last month he'd done everything except buy a billboard that said I'm impressing someone. New haircut. Gym membership. Teeth whitening strips left in the trash like evidence. A suit that cost more than our couch. He'd started taking calls on the balcony even though it was freezing outside, voice low like he was protecting a secret from the walls. And then I found the invite. Not in the mail. Not on a counter. Not where an honest person would keep it. Stuffed into the inside pocket of a garment bag, the glossy card still smelled like printer ink and arrogance. I wasn't proud of what I did after that. But I wasn't proud of being naive either. My cousin works for a staffing agency that handles high-end events. He owes me for covering his rent during his trying to be a DJ phase. One message and a small favor later, I had a uniform, a fake name, and a role that would let me float through the room like background noise. My phone buzzed in my apron pocket. A text from him. Fiancé, board dinner ran late. Probably crashing at the hotel after. Don't wait up, red heart. I stared at it until the little heart felt like an insult. Then I stepped into the ballroom. It hit me all at once. The gold and ivory decor. The string lights draped like soft stars, the silent auction tables lined with watches and weekend getaways. The stage at the front had the Horizon logo projected huge against a curtain of white flowers. I carried a tray of champagne like it weighed nothing, moving the way I'd watched servers move at weddings, smooth, careful, never making eye contact too long. And there he was, near the center of the room, laughing with a circle of men in tailored suits, his posture open and relaxed like he owned the air. He looked happy. Not the tired happy he gave me when he came home late and tried to convince me everything was fine. Real happy. The kind that blooms when you think you're getting away with something. He turned slightly, and I caught the sharp line of his jaw, the way his hair fell perfectly into place. He held a drink in one hand, gesturing with the other, telling a story, working the room, performing. And then she stepped up beside him like she belonged there. She wasn't wearing a wedding ring. That's what my eyes noticed first, because my brain was still clinging to logic. But her hand found his arm with the familiarity of someone who didn't ask permission. She was younger than me by a few years, maybe mid-20s. A deep emerald dress, sleek and expensive, the kind of fabric that moves like liquid. Hair glossy and pinned back in a way that looked effortless. She leaned in and whispered something against his ear. He smiled, soft, private, and tipped his head toward her like he was listening to the only person in the room who mattered. My throat tightened so fast it felt like my body was trying to protect my heart by cutting off air. I forced myself to move closer. I passed a table, set down a fresh cluster of flutes, and angled myself so I could hear without being obvious. In a room like this, servers were furniture, functional, replaceable, barely noticed. The circle of men parted, and I saw a familiar face, one of my fiancé's mentors, a guy who'd been to our apartment once and complimented our view like he was doing us a favor. He looked at the woman beside my fiancé and grinned. There she is, he said, loud enough that the people around them leaned in. I was wondering when you'd finally bring her. Bring her. Like she'd been promised. My fiancé chuckled. Long night. You know how it is. The woman smiled, bright and practiced. It's worth it. The mentor lifted his glass. To the future. A few people echoed it, clinking glasses like they'd rehearsed. I felt my tray wobble slightly, and I tightened my grip until my fingers ached. Then the mentor said the sentence that changed the temperature in my blood. So, he said, eyes sparkling, are we still on for the announcement after the keynote? Or are you going to keep pretending you don't have a new partner? New partner. Not girlfriend. Not date. Partner. The woman's smile didn't falter. She actually glanced toward the stage, like she could already see herself standing there. My fiancé's laugh was too smooth. Let's get through tonight. Oh, come on, another man chimed in, leaning closer. It's a charity gala, not a deposition. We're all friends here. Friends. The kind of friends who know your secrets and smile while you ruin someone's life. The woman's hand drifted, subtle, instinctive, to the lower curve of her stomach. Not a dramatic gesture. Not a performance. A protective touch. My chest went cold, because I knew that touch. I'd seen it in every movie, every pregnancy announcement, every moment a man suddenly becomes gentle for a reason that isn't love, just responsibility. My fiancé noticed me then. Not as me. As Mia. His eyes passed over my face without recognition, like my whole existence had been erased by a black apron and a fake name tag. He took a champagne flute from my tray, fingers brushing mine by accident. It felt like touching a stranger. Thank you, he said, absent-minded. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to throw the tray. I wanted to scream his real name so everyone would turn and see him as what he was. But I didn't. Because shock is loud, and survival is quiet. I stepped back, heart hammering, and watched as he leaned into the woman again, his voice lower now, intimate. She nodded like she trusted him, like she believed him, just like I had. The keynote lights dimmed, and the room shifted toward the stage. People drifted like a tide, gathering in front of the rows of chairs. The mentor patted my fiancé's shoulder and said something I couldn't hear, but my fiancé's smile widened, and I realized something that made my skin prickle. This wasn't just cheating. This was a plan. A plan that included a public announcement. A plan where I wasn't simply being betrayed. I was being replaced, officially. I backed into the service corridor before my face could give me away, pressing my shoulder against the wall like it could hold me up. My phone buzzed again in my pocket. Another message from him. Fiancé, everything okay? Haven't heard from you. I stared at the screen, my vision blurring just enough that the words swam. And in that moment, surrounded by the clink of glasses and the warm hum of wealthy generosity, I realized I had two choices. Disappear quietly like he expected, or stay long enough to learn what, exactly, he'd built behind my back, and what I could take from him when it all collapsed. Because I didn't come here for a breakdown. I came here for the truth, and I could feel it waiting for me on that stage. Story inspired by the structure and pacing of the sample you shared, without copying it. The applause rolled through the ballroom like controlled thunder. Polite. Measured. The kind of clapping that wasn't about joy, but about signaling importance. I stayed in the service corridor long enough for my pulse to slow, just enough to remind myself that panicking wouldn't protect me. Panic would make me sloppy, and sloppiness would get me noticed. I adjusted the apron, smoothed the fake name tag, and stepped back out. The keynote speaker had taken the stage, some polished executive with a voice trained to sound compassionate while saying nothing risky. The lights dimmed further, pulling everyone's attention forward. Perfect timing. No one watches the servers during speeches. I moved. Not toward him. Toward the perimeter. Toward the tables with folders tucked beneath them, the kind labeled program, donor overview, board materials. Things guests weren't meant to read but never bothered to guard because they assumed trust came free with wealth. I told myself I was just looking, just grounding myself in facts. But the truth was, once I'd heard the word partner, something inside me had shifted. The part of me that wanted explanations had gone quiet. In its place was a colder instinct. If he had a plan, I needed to see it. I stopped beside a table stacked with slim black folders. The Horizon logo was embossed in silver. I slid one open just enough to scan the contents while pretending to rearrange place cards. Agenda, donor totals, future initiatives, and then a section titled Strategic Leadership Transition. My breath caught. I waited until a laugh rippled through the crowd, something the speaker said that sounded profound but wasn't, then slipped the folder fully open and tilted it toward the low light. There were names, board members, executives, and his, listed under outgoing director of operations. Below it, under incoming co-director, her name, the woman in the emerald dress. I stared at the page like it might change if I blinked. Co-director, partner wasn't romantic. It was professional. This wasn't an affair happening on the side of his life. This was his life now. A quiet cough behind me snapped my spine straight. Everything okay? I turned to see one of the senior coordinators, early 40s, clipboard, sharp eyes that had definitely noticed I'd been at that table too long. Just fixing the folders, I said, keeping my voice light. Someone bumped them. She studied me for half a second longer than necessary, then nodded. Be quick. After the keynote, we're moving into the announcement. The announcement. I closed the folder and slid it back into place, my fingers numb. So that was the plan. A charity gala. A captive audience of investors and donors. A clean, respectable transition wrapped in applause and champagne. No mess. No questions. No awkward explanations. And me? I didn't even exist in the margins. The keynote ended. Applause again. Louder this time. People stood, stretching, checking phones, turning toward the bar like synchronized swimmers. I found him near the stage steps, already being congratulated for things he hadn't even announced yet. He caught my eye again, or rather, caught Mia's face, and smiled absent-mindedly. That smile used to be mine. I moved past him, close enough to hear the mentor's voice again. Boards thrilled, the mentor was saying. Fresh image. Stability. And with the baby coming? I didn't hear the rest. The baby. Not a rumor. Not a possibility. A certainty, spoken out loud. My ears rang, but my feet kept moving. Years of learning how to function while hurt kicked in. Smile, nod, don't break until you're alone. I slipped into a side hallway near the bathrooms, pretending to check my phone. It buzzed immediately. Fiancé, hey, weird question. Are you watching the livestream? Livestream. I almost laughed. So this was how he planned to control the narrative, announce it publicly, then come home with a story already wrapped and delivered. No room for arguments. No room for me. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened the camera app and went back toward the ballroom, staying near the back where the lighting was low. The stage lights came back on. The Horizon logo glowed behind the podium. The mentor stepped up, tapping the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, voice warm and confident. Thank you again for your generosity tonight. Before we continue, we'd like to share some exciting news about the future of Horizon. My heart thudded against my ribs. I lifted my phone slightly, just enough. This organization has always thrived on strong leadership and shared vision, he continued. And with that in mind, we're proud to announce a new chapter. He gestured toward the side of the stage. My fiancé stepped up, straightening his jacket, looking every bit the man I thought I knew. The room applauded. Then she joined him, the woman in emerald. One hand resting gently, deliberately, on her stomach now, no subtlety left. The applause swelled. I hit record. This is my pleasure, the mentor said, smiling broadly, to introduce our incoming co-director, whose dedication and insight have already made a tremendous impact. He said her name. She smiled, said a few words about gratitude and vision and community. The kind of speech that says nothing personal while implying everything. Then my fiancé took the microphone. I'm incredibly excited, he said, voice steady, practiced. Not just professionally, but personally. This role represents growth, partnership, and building something meaningful for the future. Partnership. Future. Every word landed like it had been sharpened beforehand. And, he added, glancing at her with a look I recognized as rehearsed intimacy, I'm grateful to be doing this alongside someone I trust deeply. The room erupted. I recorded every second. When the applause finally faded and the crowd surged forward to congratulate them, I lowered my phone. My hands were shaking so badly I had to grip the edge of a table. I had proof. Not just of cheating. Of timing. Of intent. Of a life carefully assembled without me. My phone buzzed again. Fiancé, I'll explain when I get home. Please don't freak out. I stared at the message, then at the stage where he stood, arm around her waist, basking in applause. Explain. As if explanations could stitch over erasure. I slipped my phone back into my apron and headed for the service exit, my mind already moving faster than my feet. He thought tonight was the end of something. He was wrong. It was the beginning. Because now I knew the shape of the story he planned to tell. And I had the evidence to tell a different one. I didn't go home. That was the first choice I made that night that didn't involve reacting to him. I sat in my car in the underground garage for nearly an hour, the engine off, phone screen lighting up the dark every few minutes as messages piled in. Calls I didn't answer. Texts that got progressively more frantic, then irritated, then carefully calm again, like he was testing which version of himself might still work on me. Fiancé, please just talk to me. Fiancé, you're misunderstanding everything. Fiancé, I didn't want you to find out like this. That one almost made me laugh. Like there had been a right way to erase someone. When the shaking in my hands finally stopped, I drove, not toward our apartment, but toward the river. There was a small 24-hour cafe there, mostly truckers and night shift nurses. The kind of place where no one looked twice at a woman staring into a mug like it held answers. I replayed the video once. Just once. Not to torture myself, but to remind myself that this wasn't a nightmare my brain had invented. This was real, public, documented. Around 1:40 a.m. my phone rang again. Not him. Unknown number. I let it ring once, twice. Something in my gut told me to answer. Hello? There was a pause on the line. A breath. Then a woman's voice. Calm, controlled, older than mine. Is this his fiancé? My spine straightened. Yes, I said slowly. Who is this? Another pause. Longer. My name doesn't matter yet, she said. But I think we need to talk. About what happened tonight. The cafe suddenly felt too loud, too bright. How did you get this number? I asked. I work very closely with Horizon, she replied. And I was very surprised to see you weren't there. That sentence cracked something open. You were expecting me? I asked. Yes, she said quietly. We all were. She suggested we meet somewhere neutral in the morning. A public place. No paper trail. She sounded like someone used to being careful. Before I could overthink it, I agreed. We hung up, and I sat there long enough for the coffee to go cold. Because suddenly, the story wasn't just about betrayal. It was about omission. The next morning, I barely slept. I went back to the apartment just long enough to shower and change. He wasn't there. His side of the bed was untouched. His toothbrush gone. That hurt more than the gala. At 10 sharp, I walked into a quiet hotel lounge downtown. All glass and neutral colors and people pretending not to listen. She was already there, seated near the window. She stood when she saw me. She was elegant in a way that didn't ask permission, late 40s, early 50s, sharp eyes, posture that suggested she was used to rooms going quiet when she spoke. Thank you for coming, she said. You said you were expecting me, I replied. Start there. She nodded, gesturing for me to sit. I'm on the board, she said. Not Horizons. The investment group behind it. My chest tightened. Last night's announcement, she continued, was supposed to include you. I blinked. What? She folded her hands calmly. As his spouse. I felt like the floor had tilted. He told us you couldn't attend, she went on. Family emergency. We assumed you were aware of the transition. What transition? I asked, even though my mouth already knew the words. She looked at me carefully now. The exit. Silence pressed in around us. He's been negotiating his departure for months, she said. Not promotion. Not growth. A structured exit. My heart pounded. That's not what was announced. No, she agreed. Because something changed. She paused, then said it. She did. The woman in emerald. The plan, the board member said, was for him to step down quietly after the fiscal year. New leadership, clean break. He was overextended. Questionable decisions. We were preparing damage control. I thought of the folders. The names. The word outgoing I'd seen but hadn't fully processed. And then, she continued, he brought her in. Framed it as innovation. New image. Stability. The word stability tasted bitter now. She has family money, the board member added. Significant donors. And leverage. And the baby? I asked. She exhaled slowly. Complicated. The pregnancy accelerated everything. Made people nervous. Made others sympathetic. Sympathetic. To him. My hands clenched under the table. So you're saying, I said carefully, that last night wasn't a celebration. She met my eyes. It was a gamble. I swallowed. And me? Her expression softened, just slightly. You were supposed to be proof, she said. Of continuity. Of character. Of the kind of man who doesn't implode when things get difficult. I let out a sharp, humorless breath. He removed you from the picture, she finished, and replaced you with a narrative we couldn't verify. I thought of his messages. Please don't freak out. He hadn't been afraid of hurting me. He'd been afraid of losing control of the story. And why tell me this? I asked. She leaned back. Because last night, after the announcement, someone sent me a video. My stomach dropped. She slid her phone across the table. On the screen was my recording. The speech. The phrasing. The timing. And, she said, voice steady, because if you didn't know about this, then there are other things you don't know either. I stared at the phone. What kind of things? Her gaze sharpened. The kind that turns a graceful exit into a liability. The cafe noise faded again. My pulse roared in my ears. In trying to erase me, he hadn't just betrayed a relationship. He'd exposed himself. And now, standing at the edge of a much bigger collapse, I realized the twist wasn't that he'd replaced me. It was that he'd needed me all along. And I was no longer on his side. I didn't tell him I knew. That was the second real choice I made. The first had been not going home. The second was understanding that silence, used correctly, was louder than confrontation. After meeting the board member, I sat in my car again, hands on the steering wheel, staring through the windshield like the city might rearrange itself if I waited long enough. My phone buzzed nonstop. Missed calls. Apologies sharpened into irritation. Then concern again. He was cycling through versions of himself, trying to find the one that would still work on me. I let him. Instead of replying, I drove to a co-working space downtown where I sometimes worked remotely. Quiet. Anonymous. Glass walls and white noise. I plugged in my laptop and opened the shared folder we'd used for years: leases, insurance documents, budgets, wedding planning spreadsheets we'd abandoned somewhere between save the dates and denial. And then I opened his folder. He'd always been careless with digital boundaries. He believed trust was something people owed him by default. Passwords were reused, files mislabeled, things hidden in plain sight. I didn't start with finances. I started with email. Search term, Horizon. Hundreds of messages bloomed onto the screen. Threads with assistants, donors, vendors. Most of it looked normal, until it didn't. Expense approvals that didn't line up with event schedules. Consulting invoices paid twice. Travel reimbursements for trips that didn't exist. I cross-referenced dates, my jaw tightening with each mismatch. Then I found a folder titled Drafts. Inside it, unsent emails. One of them stopped my breath. If the board pushes back, remind them the donor funds were allocated with prior verbal approval. No one wants an audit right now. My fingers hovered over the trackpad. Audit. I thought of the board members' words. Questionable decisions. Damage control. This wasn't a mistake. This was a mess he'd been holding together with charm and timing. And I'd been his alibi. 4 years. I kept digging. There were calendar entries he'd marked as client dinners that matched weekends he'd told me he was working late. Vendor contracts signed without full approval. A side agreement with a shell nonprofit that funneled money back into Horizon 4 Consulting. Circular. Convenient. Illegal enough to be dangerous. My chest felt tight, not with heartbreak now, but with clarity. He hadn't just been lying to me. He'd been using me. Because I was stability. Normalcy. A clean domestic background that made his life look anchored. Every photo of us at holidays. Every mention of my fiancé in meetings. I was proof he was trustworthy. And now I wasn't there to vouch for him. My phone lit up again. Fiancé, I'm coming home. We need to talk. Please don't do anything rash. Rash. Like disappearing me from his life and unveiling a replacement at a gala wasn't impulsive. I closed my laptop and finally replied. Me, okay. One word. Neutral. Non-committal. The silence after that was immediate. He was recalibrating. I packed a bag before he arrived. Not dramatically. Not angrily. Methodically. Documents. My laptop. The backup drive I'd copied his files onto. My passport. Things that mattered. When he walked in, he looked like a man who hadn't slept, tie loosened, eyes red, confidence leaking out in small, ugly ways. He froze when he saw the bag. You're leaving? He asked, like the concept offended him. I'm going out, I said. We can talk. That unsettled him more than yelling would have. He sat at the kitchen island, rubbing his temples. Last night got out of hand. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. But it did. He nodded quickly. It's complicated. Everything is, I said. His eyes searched my face. You weren't at the gala. No, I agreed. Something flickered there. Relief, maybe. Or calculation. They pushed me, he continued. The board. They wanted a story. I didn't think. You never do, I said quietly. He bristled. That's not fair. Neither is lying to me for months, I replied. Or replacing me without warning. He flinched. It's not like that. I almost smiled. Because he still thought this was about us. I need time, he said. To fix things. For all of us. All of us. I picked up my bag. I think you should worry about fixing other things first, I said. His jaw tightened. What does that mean? I looked at him then. Really looked. The man who'd rehearsed speeches. Who'd curated narratives. Who'd always believed consequences were for people without charm. It means, I said, that I'm done protecting you. The color drained from his face so fast it was almost impressive. What are you talking about? I didn't answer. I walked out. That night, I sent one email. Not to the board. Not to the press. To the woman I'd met that morning. I found discrepancies. I have documentation. If you want it, you know how to reach me. She replied 10 minutes later. We do. I didn't feel victorious. I felt strangely calm. Because once you see someone clearly, once you understand the machinery behind their charm, you can't unsee it. And I finally understood the real twist. He thought the danger was being exposed. But the real danger was losing the person who knew how to keep him hidden. The first sign that things were unraveling wasn't a phone call. It was silence. 3 days passed after I sent the email. No updates. No dramatic fallout. No late-night knock on the door. Just a strange, weightless quiet that made every sound in my temporary apartment feel amplified. The hum of the fridge, the click of my laptop keys, my own breathing when I lay awake at night. He didn't contact me at all. And that scared me more than his anger ever had. On the 4th morning, I got an email from an unfamiliar address. Subject, clarification. Body, can we meet? Privately. Today. No signature. No explanation. I almost deleted it. Instead, I forwarded it to the board member with a single line. He reached out. Her response came fast. Do not meet him alone. I didn't reply, because part of me already knew I was going to. We met at a coffee shop near the office park where Horizon rented its executive suites. Neutral ground, glass walls, cameras everywhere. I chose a table near the window, back straight, hands wrapped around a cup I didn't plan to drink. He arrived 10 minutes late. On purpose. He looked smaller. Not physically, he was still tall, still well-dressed, but the confidence that used to fill spaces ahead of him now lagged behind. His suit was familiar, one I'd helped him choose. That realization hit harder than it should have. He sat without asking. You look tired, he said. I didn't answer. He exhaled slowly. They're auditing. There it was. Not we need to talk. Not I'm sorry. They're auditing. How bad? I asked. His eyes flicked up sharply. You know. I took a sip of coffee and tasted nothing. They froze discretionary accounts, he continued. Pulled contracts. People won't return my calls. I tilted my head. Sounds inconvenient. His jaw tightened. You sent something. I sent the truth, I said. He leaned forward. You sent pieces. That made me pause. What does that mean? He studied my face, like he was searching for cracks. You think this is about stolen money? Sloppy accounting? You think I was skimming? You weren't? I asked. He smiled then. Not warmly. Desperately. I was covering, he said. For them. I felt my spine stiffen. For who? He glanced around the cafe, lowering his voice. The board. The donors. The people who panic when numbers don't align with their values. I shook my head. That's not what the documents show. Because you don't have all of them, he snapped, then caught himself. Softened his tone. I was protecting Horizon. Protecting the mission. The Shell nonprofit? I asked. The double invoices? Temporary measures, he said. Bridge solutions. I laughed once, short and sharp. You sound like a criminal explaining himself to a mirror. His eyes flashed. You sound like someone who doesn't understand leverage. The word hung between us. You think you do, I said quietly, but you don't. He leaned back, rubbing his hands together. They're going to make me the fall guy. I waited. They'll say I went rogue, he continued. That I abused trust. That they had no idea. And? I asked. And if that happens, he said, meeting my eyes, they'll destroy me. There it was. Not fear of guilt. Fear of abandonment. You knew the risk, I said. I calculated it, he corrected. And I had it handled. Until you didn't. His phone buzzed on the table. He ignored it. They think the pregnancy ties me down, he said suddenly. Makes me manageable. My stomach twisted. You think I wanted this? He went on. She wasn't supposed to matter. She was access. Capital. Optics. I felt something cold spread through my chest. And the baby? I asked. He hesitated. Just a fraction. Complication, he said. I stood. That's enough. Wait, he said quickly. I need your help. I stared at him. Why? Because you're credible, he said. You always were. You see patterns. You keep records. People trust you. People. Not me. If you testify, he continued, if you confirm my version. My version of what? I interrupted. That I was clueless? Or complicit? He swallowed. That you didn't know. I laughed again, quieter this time. You want me to lie. You'd be protecting yourself too, he said. If this turns criminal, they'll look at everyone close to me. I leaned down, hands on the table. You already erased me, I said. Don't try to use me now. His voice dropped. They're not clean. I know, I replied. That's why I didn't go to the press. He froze. What? I straightened. I went to the board. His face drained of color. And, I added, they went to their lawyers. The twist landed slowly. You didn't send everything, he whispered. No, I said. I sent enough. His phone buzzed again. This time he answered. I watched his expression change. Confusion, then alarm, then something close to panic. Yes, he said. I understand. He hung up and looked at me like I'd become a stranger. They're suspending me, he said. Effective immediately. I nodded. That was fast. They want a statement, he said. A narrative. Of course they do. He stood abruptly. You did this. No, I said calmly. You did. He stared at me, eyes wild. You think this is over? I met his gaze without flinching. No, I said. I think this is where the truth stops protecting anyone. I walked out before he could respond. Outside, the air felt sharper, cleaner. My phone buzzed. A message from the board member. There's something else. About the pregnancy. We need to talk. I stopped walking. Because suddenly, I realized the biggest twist wasn't what he'd done to save himself. It was what someone else had done to save him. And I was just starting to see how deep the manipulation really went. I thought I was prepared for the truth. That was my last mistake. We met in the same hotel lounge as before. Same glass walls. Same neutral furniture. Different energy. The board member didn't stand this time. She didn't offer coffee. She didn't waste words. The pregnancy is real, she said. But it's not what you think. I waited. I'd learned that silence made people reveal more than questions ever could. She's not carrying his child, the board member continued. The words didn't land all at once. They scattered, bounced around my skull. Then whose? I asked. She exhaled slowly. That depends on which version you want. Legally, it's his. I felt cold spread through my arms. But biologically, she said, it isn't. I stared at her. You're saying? She was already pregnant when they met, the board member said. By one of the donors. The room tilted. He knew? I asked. Yes, she replied. From the beginning. My chest tightened painfully. Then why? Because the donor couldn't acknowledge it, she said. Public morals. Family foundation. Too much at stake. I let out a hollow laugh. So my ex agreed to play savior? Not savior, she corrected. Shield. The pieces slid together in my mind with horrifying clarity. The sudden promotion. The rushed announcement. The baby as stability. Me being removed because I complicated the optics. He signed documents, she continued. Parental acknowledgement. Financial responsibility. Silence clauses. And Horizon? I asked. She met my eyes. Horizon got the donation. My stomach twisted. They needed someone disposable, she said. Someone ambitious enough to take the fall if anything went wrong. And that was him, I whispered. Yes, she said. Until it wasn't. I understood then. He hadn't just betrayed me. He'd sold himself. And the audit? I asked. She tilted her head. Real. But selective. The word selective echoed. They'll recover most of the funds quietly, she said. He'll be blamed publicly for mismanagement. Not fraud. Not conspiracy. Prison? I asked. She shook her head. Unlikely. I clenched my jaw. So he walks away. No, she said softly. He disappears. I looked up sharply. He signed a non-disclosure settlement last night, she added. In exchange for silence, severance, and full parental responsibility. The cruelty of it was almost elegant. He'd wanted control. They gave him a cage that looked like protection. And me? I asked. She paused. You're clean. I waited. You always were, she said. That's why this ends here. Ends. That word felt heavy. What happens now? I asked. She studied me like she was committing me to memory. You move on. He becomes a cautionary anecdote. And Horizon survives. And the woman? I asked. She gets security, she said. Money. A father on paper. And a story that never changes. I stood. I didn't win, I said. No, she agreed. You opted out. He called me that night. From a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. Almost. Did you know? He asked immediately. His voice sounded smaller than I remembered. Thinner. Yes, I said. A breath. Shaky. They used me, he said. You volunteered, I replied. Silence stretched. She's not mine, he whispered. I know. Another pause. Longer this time. I thought you'd come back, he said. I thought once you saw what they were doing. You thought wrong, I said. They're taking everything, he said. My career. My name. I closed my eyes. You gave them that power. You were supposed to be my anchor, he said suddenly, anger cracking through. You were supposed to make me look normal. There it was. The last truth. I was a disguise, I said. You were stability, he snapped. Without you, I look exactly like what I am. I said nothing. Say something, he demanded. So I did. I hope the child grows up loved, I said. Because none of this was their fault. His breathing hitched. And you? He asked. What do you get? I looked around my quiet apartment. Boxes half unpacked. No photos on the walls yet. No shared future waiting to be assembled. I get my name back, I said. He laughed once. Bitter. Broken. You always wanted to be right, he said. No, I replied. I wanted to be real. I hung up. Weeks later, the news cycle moved on. A short article. A resignation. Words like restructuring and strategic shift. No scandal. No justice. Just silence. Sometimes, late at night, I still think about how close I was to disappearing quietly, to letting him erase me and rewrite the story without resistance. I think about how easy it would have been to stay. And then I remember this. He didn't lose me because of another woman. He lost me because the moment he thought I was replaceable was the moment I stopped being useful. And that was the most expensive mistake he ever made. The victory cost me the future I thought I was building, but the price of staying would have been myself. And that's one debt I refuse to pay.